in Iraq, in Pakistan, and now in Darfur, putting U.S. troops on the ground, boots on the ground. Is this something the American public has a stomach for?
Well, I think the American public has a stomach for success. And my recommendations on Bosnia, I admit I was the first one to recommend it, they saved tens of thousands of lives. And initially John McCain opposed it along with a lot of other people. But the end result was it worked. And look what we did in Bosnia. We took Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, being told by everyone, I was told by everyone, that this would mean that they've been fighting and killing each other for 1,000 years. It could never work. There's a relatively stable government there now, as there is in Kosovo. With regard to Iraq, I indicated that it would be a mistake to go into. I gave the president the power. I voted for the power because he said he needed it not to go to war, but to keep the United States, the UN in line, to keep sanctions on Iraq and not let them be lifted. I, along with Dick Lugar, before we went to war, said if we were to go to war without our allies, without the kind of support we needed, we'd be there for a decade. It'd cost us tens of billions of dollars. John McCain said no, that was going to be okay. I don't have a stomach for genocide when it comes to Darfur. We can now impose a no-fly zone. It's within our capacity. We can lead NATO if we're willing to take a hard stand. We can. I've been in those camps in Chad. I've seen the suffering. Thousands and tens of thousands of people have died and are dying. We should rally the world to act, and we should demonstrate it by our own movement to provide the helicopters to get those 21,000 forces of the African Union in there now to stop this genocide.
Thank you, Senator. Governor.
Oh, man, it's so obvious that I'm a Washington outsider and someone just not used to the way you guys operate, because here you voted for the war and now you oppose the war. You're one who says, you know, as so many politicians do, I was for it before I was against it, or vice versa. Americans are craving that straight talk and just want to know, hey, if you voted for it, tell us why you voted for it. And it was a war resolution. And you had supported John McCain's military strategies pretty adamantly until this race, and you had opposed very adamantly Barack Obama's military strategy, including cutting off funding for the troops that attempt all through the primary. And I watched those debates, and so you know, I remember what those were all about. But as for Darfur, we can agree on that also. The support of the no-fly zone, making sure that all options are on the table there also. America is in a position to help. What I've done in my position to help as the governor of a state that's pretty rich in natural resources, we have a $40 billion investment fund, a savings fund called the Alaska Permanent Fund. When I and others in the legislature found out that we had some millions of dollars in Sudan, we called for divestment through legislation of those dollars to make sure we weren't doing anything that would be seen as condoning the activities there in Darfur. That legislation hasn't passed yet, but it needs to, because all of us as individuals and as humanitarians and as elected officials should do all that we can to end those atrocities in that region of the world.
Is there a line that should be drawn about when we decide to go in?
Absolutely. There is a line that should be drawn. The line that should be drawn is whether or not we, first of all, have the capacity to do anything about it, number one. Number two, there are certain new lines that have to be drawn internationally. When a country engages in genocide, when a country engages in harboring people who are killing our people, terrorists, and they will do nothing about it, that, in fact, at that point, that country, in my view, and in Barack's view, forfeits their right to say, you have no right to intervene at all. The truth of the matter, though, is that let's go back to John McCain's strategy. I never supported John McCain's strategy on the war. John McCain said exactly what Dick Cheney said. Go back and look at Barack Obama's statements and mine. Go look at JoeBiden.com contemporaneously. Held hearings in the summer before we went to war, saying if we went to war, we would not be greeted as liberators. We would have a fight between the Sunnis and Shias. We would be tied down for a decade. It would cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. John McCain was saying the exact opposite. John McCain was lockstep with Dick Cheney at that point about how this was going to be easy. So John McCain's strategy in this war, not just whether or not to go, the actual conduct of the war has been absolutely wrong from the outset.
Governor.
I beg to disagree with you again here on whether you supported Barack Obama or John McCain's strategies. Here again, you can say what you want to say a month out before people are asked to vote on this, but we listen to the debates. I think tomorrow morning, the pundits are going to start doing the who said what at what time, and we'll have proof of some of this. But again, John McCain, who knows how to win a war, who's been there, and he's faced challenges, and he knows what evil is, and he knows what it takes to overcome the challenges here with our military. He knows to learn from the mistakes, from the blunders that we have seen in the war in Iraq especially. He will know how to implement the strategies, working with our commanders, though, and listening to what they have to say, taking the politics out of these war issues. He'll know how to win a war.
Thank you, Governor. Probably the biggest cliche about the vice presidency is that it's a